The fire has been lowered these past weeks. Less light means less visibility through the window, and less visibility means another night where no one passing on the road can see quite what we are doing or how we are doing it. Lisa doesn't understand any of this. She is 6 years old, and she understands that the fire is warm, that her father's shoulder is warm, and that the words her mother taught her 3 months ago, before the soldiers came through, before I'd learned what a pike does to a woman who steps between a doorway and a man, had decided to come through it, rise up through her chest like water finding its level. Natural, inevitable. Her mother's exact cadence, her mother's exact posture, thumb crossed over thumb.
Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum.
Her voice is the most dangerous sound in the world. It is also all I have left of Margaret. I watch her and I say nothing, and I do not smooth her hair back from her face, though I want to, because if I touched her right now, while she sounds like that, while she sways like that, I will not be able to maintain the composure required to keep her alive. Outside, somewhere past the tree line, there are men who burned Magdeburg. I don't say this to be dramatic. I say it because it is simply true. The way winter is true. The way the empty chair at our table is true. Those men, or men indistinguishable from them, marched through here in October. They were Lutherans killing Catholics, or Catholics killing Lutherans. After 3 years, the distinction has become almost theological in its abstraction, which I recognize as a very Catholic way to think about it, and which is exactly the kind of thing that will get my daughter killed if I'm not careful. Father Anselm understood this. Father Anselm spent 30 years shepherding a flock that had learned to worship in cellars and barns in the hollowed-out middle of an ordinary weekday. And he was better at survival than any man I've known, and even he didn't survive. They found him in the church he wasn't supposed to be still using, with the chalice he wasn't supposed to still possess. And what they did to him before the end, I know only from what the miller's boy reported. And I have made a deliberate decision not to think about it. The way I have made a deliberate decision not to think about that pike, and that doorway, and Margaret's face in the moment before.
Et benedictus fructus ventris tui.
She has her mother's voice entirely. The same slight lengthening on ventris. I taught Margaret those words in our first winter of marriage. Crouched beside her in the dark of my father's house, while the snow came sideways off the Bohemian hills. And she learned them in an evening, and she prayed them every evening, until the evening she no longer could. And now Lisa's prays them, and the room is full of dead people. I'm watching the window. I'm always watching the window. The knock comes the way all terrible things come. At the moment you'd almost let yourself forget to be afraid. 3 raps, measured. The knock of a man exercising patience as a form of power, which is a thing the new superintendent's man has clearly practiced. My blood goes cold in a single instant. I feel it happen, feel the chill cascade from my sternum outward, and I'm moving before the echo dies. My hand covers her mouth. She gasps against my palm, small and hot. And I already on my knees on the hearthstone, already reaching under the bench where I keep it. The Lutheran Catechism, purchased in full view of the market square on Tuesday, so that no fewer than 11 people could observe me purchasing it. The pages are still too stiff, though. We have not read it enough, and if the man at the door asks her to recite, if he crouches down to her level, with that particular smile they practice, the one that says, "I am kind to children. I am not a monster. Now come, little one, let's hear what you know." I press the book into her hands. "Not that one," I tell her. The words are barely shaped, less than a whisper, a ghost of a whisper. "This one." She looks at the book and looks at me. Margaret died on a Wednesday. Father Anselm died on a Friday, which felt obscenely significant, which I have tried very hard not to think about either. I have been conducting a campaign these 3 months against the contents of my own mind, against the pike in that doorway, and the Friday, and the 30 years of a man who survived everything until he didn't. I have been moderately successful. I had managed to dress Lisa every morning. I had managed to make bread on Fridays out of sheer muscle memory, and then had to sit down when I realized that I was still keeping the old rhythms without meaning to, that we are so much more Catholic than we know. But her expression, her face right now in the firelight, she is 6 years old, and those words are the first words she ever memorized. Before letters, before numbers, before her own full name written down, her mother began teaching them to her when she was barely speaking in full sentences, crouched exactly as I crouched with Margaret, thumb over thumb, the same posture going back God knows how many generations, an unbroken chain of cupped hands, passing the specific fire through every wind that tried to extinguish it. And now I am the wind. I am the thing that extinguishes it. I am on my knees in front of my daughter, asking her to forget the last living proof that her mother existed. She's confused, purely heartbreakingly confused. Not frightened, though. Not yet. She will learn fear soon enough. I cannot protect her from that. I can't protect her from much, it seems. I could not protect her mother. What I can do, the small sovereign thing remaining to me, is stand between her and this door. "Read," I breathe. "If he asks, you read from that one. You've always read from that one. You have never read from any other." She doesn't understand, but she nods. I stand. I smooth my coat with both hands. My father's gesture. His father's gesture before that. Generations of men smoothing themselves into something that could open a door and survive what was on the other side of it. I walk across the room, and I do not look back at her, because if I look back at those eyes, at the book held uncertainly in those small hands, at the absolute bewilderment of a child who has just been asked to be a different kind of person than the one her mother made her, I will not be able to open that door. But I do open that door. The superintendent's man stands in the snow with a lantern and expression of seasoned bureaucratic suspicion. He is perhaps 30, well fed, which means something these days. He has the particular look of a man who has been given a small amount of power and has organized his entire interior life around it. His eyes move past me immediately into the room, to my daughter by the fire. "The child," he says. "She was praying." "Reading," I say. "Her catechism." He looks at me for a long moment. The lantern swings slightly. Behind me I can hear the fire and Lisa, and the faint sound of pages turning as she finds something, anything, some Lutheran psalm, to have open and visible when his eyes return to her. "Luther's catechism?" "Is there any other kind?" I say. The snow falls between us. He looks at me, and I look at him, and somewhere in the middle distance, a tree cracks under the weight of ice. The sound is very much like a door being broken open. and I watch his eyes to see if he believes me. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Courtney, and welcome to the Time Travelers Club. Today we are going to discuss a topic almost as convoluted as last week's discussion on the Holy Roman Empire. But this episode has everything to do with understanding what's going to happen next. The Reformation and Counter-Reformation acted as major catalysts for the intensity of the German witch hunts by fostering an environment of acute religious anxiety, instability, and a heightened focus on eradicating superstitious threats to the true faith. As both Protestant and Catholic reformers sought to purify their respective religious practices and eliminate perceived magical deviations such as charms, exorcisms, and folk healing, they inadvertently encouraged local authorities to aggressively prosecute those suspected of dabbling in these forbidden arts. This climate was further exacerbated by the confessional wars and the apocalyptic rhetoric prevalent during this era, which framed the existence of witches as evidence of a cosmic battle between God and the devil. Consequently, by stripping away traditional protective rituals and demanding a more rigorous militant adherence to doctrine, both movements turned the search for diabolical contaminants into a communal duty, transforming local socioeconomic tensions into large-scale, state-sanctioned witch crazes. So let's set the scene. In the early 16th century, the Catholic Church, or simply the Church, wasn't one institution among many. It was at this point the operating system of the Western civilization. Birth, marriage, death, the calendar, the law, the university, the hospital, all of it ran through or alongside the Church. The Pope held authority that could, theoretically, override kings. Latin bound entire civilizations together across language barriers. There was, in a way, one Western world, and Rome sat at its center, collecting rent. And what a Rome it was! The papacy of the early 1500s was less a spiritual institution than a Renaissance court with a cross bolted to the front. Pope Alexander VI, born Rodrigo Borgia, father of the notorious Cesare and Lucrezia, was openly nepotistic, politically scheming, and reputedly not particularly troubled by the celibacy requirement. His successor, Julius II, personally led armies into battle in full armor, earning the nickname El Papa Terrible. Leo X, who was pope when Luther launched his revolt, famously remarked upon his election, "God has given us the papacy. Let us enjoy it." These were not men burning with pastoral anxiety about the souls of German peasants. Below the papal court, the rot ran just as deep. Bishops accumulated multiple wealthy sees without visiting any of them. Parish priests were often barely literate, going through the motions of sacraments they only dimly understood. The sale of indulgences, documents that literally reduced time in purgatory, had become a blatant fundraising racket, with agents traveling from town to town like theological snake oil salesmen. The theology behind indulgences was complicated and defensible. The practice had become indefensible. And yet, underneath the institutional decay, a genuine spiritual hunger was growing. Mystical movements like the Devotio Moderna in the Netherlands encouraged personal, inward piety over ritualistic observance. Humanist scholars like Erasmus of Rotterdam, the great wit and critic of the age, were applying rigorous philosophical scrutiny to Scripture and finding that some church doctrines rested on translation errors in 1,000-year-old Latin Bibles. Erasmus himself savaged clerical corruption in works of biting satire, famously writing in praise of folly as a skewering of church hypocrisy. And then, when Luther arrived, declined to follow him into schism. Erasmus wanted reform from within. History, as it so often does, ignored his preference entirely. The ground was prepared. All it needed was a spark. And the spark came from a thunderstorm in Thuringia.
Martin Luther was born in 1483 in Eisleben, the son of a copper miner who had scratched his way up to the modest prosperity and who had fierce, specific ambitions for his son. Hans Luther wanted Martin to become a lawyer. Martin was sent to the University of Erfurt, one of Germany's finest, where he was brilliant, argumentative, and apparently destined for the legal career his father had carefully mapped out for him. Then, in July 1505, riding back to Erfurt during a violent thunderstorm, a lightning bolt apparently struck the ground near him. I'm just going to say it. Maybe didn't happen.
Yeah.
Maybe. Who knows?
We shall see. We shall see. What
every-
are his miraculous claims around this thing?
Right. We're terrified and convinced he was about to die. He cried out to St. Anne, the patron saint of miners, which tells you something about how thoroughly his father's world had shaped him, even in this moment of mortal panic. Help me, St. Anne! I will become a monk! And he survived. He kept the vow. And his father was apoplectic.
He's pissed.
He's like,
Pissed.
what? No, like it's just funny to me. It's like splitting hairs because really, church lawyer. It's just a different kind of lawyer.
It is, and you can be a church lawyer at this point in time,
right? I'm like, you still have a good job. I don't know. Seems like we're splitting hairs, but whatever. But Martin didn't care either way. What followed in the Augustinian friary at Erfurt was years of what we likely today recognize as severe religious anxiety bordering on clinical scrupulosity. Luther went to confession constantly, sometimes multiple times a day, confessing sins so minute and obscure that his confessor, a supposedly patient and wise Johann Strautspitz, reportedly told him to come back when he had something actually worth confessing. It's just saying a lot. About the Catholic
is mental illness. That is mental illness right there, and that is the crux of the issue with everything having to do with the Christian church. Because every aspect of your thoughts, like, I thought a bad thing, I have sinned. It's
the thing about Catholics, right, is confessionals are everything, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the big splits. Mm-hmm. This idea that you had to go to essentially a professional to talk to God, right? Yeah. And that means if you were dying and a priest didn't come to you in time and you died, you don't get last rites or last confession. That means you could go to hell. There's some Catholic guilt here,
absolutely.
And even they are like, bro, relax. That's me telling you something.
No, and if you think of sins as dirt, this is the child that literally has a speck of dirt on them and is like,
even more ironic since his dad was a miner. But but anyway, the standard medieval framework promised grace could be earned through sacraments, good works, and penance. For Luther, this was apparently psychologically crushing. If you think literally everything you do is wrong, I guess it could be tedious after a while.
It sounds like mental illness. All of this sounds like mental illness.
Mm-hmm. The system demanded he perform his way to salvation, and no amount of performing was ever enough to quiet the terror inside him. So it feels like he's blaming this church, but I'm like, bro, they're telling you to take a chill pill. You're putting this on yourself, bro.
You done goofed.
Yeah, like he's always like written off as like this like calm, collected guy who just was like so upset with how the church was being, like so corrupt. And it's like, yes, but also it comes from a place of OCD and
Yes.
incredible anxiety.
An incredible amount of mental illness is present here.
Exactly. And it's funny because like a lot of like the big arguments for Protestantism, right, was like the idea like, oh, these saints, it's idolatry, right? Like, and yet his whole origin story and the reason he supposedly became a monk was because he cried out to Saint Anne. Not God, Saint Anne. So I find that interesting. I'm not a theologian. I'm not like a religious historian. I'm just saying it's interesting.
Indeed.
But anyway, Staupitz, recognizing something exceptional, shall we say, in this tormented young friar, directed him toward a deeper reading of Augustine and sent him to Wittenberg to teach theology at the newly founded university there. To me, it sounds like he's like, oh my God, we need to get rid of this guy.
Get him out of my face. If he's in my confessional booth again, I'm going to scream like something like
up and he finally is like someone's like, hey, Wittenberg is like opening up a new university and they were wondering if you'd have anyone in mind. I have just the guy. Hold on, let me go. You know what? I don't even need to go get him. He'll probably be here in about 5 minutes for his confession. Or he was like in this confession, like, who can I send over? And there's Martin Luther. He's like, oh my God, I know the perfect guy. He probably saw the light literally shine down into that booth.
He's probably like,
that was his miracle.
God has protected me from this hooligan.
This was a miracle. Like, where you could totally repent all these sins? Go to Wittenberg. Like 5 days ride from here. Goodbye. Pack your bags. Don't worry about it. I've already done it. I'll send you my bags. Go.
Oh my God.
So it was here in Wittenberg, preparing lectures on Paul's letters to the Romans, that Luther's famous term Erlebnis, his tower experience, occurred because he's going to have more experiences.
Oh, yay, illness. Woo!
I'm not saying people can't have these like profound moments of faith or miracles, I guess, because I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. It just seems weird he's having so many. Anyway, fixing on Romans 1:17, he suddenly understood that the righteousness of God Paul described was not a punishing standard to be met, but a gift to be received. Which I bet you Staupitz wished he had realized sooner.
Mm-hmm.
God justified the sinner not through earned merit, but through faith alone, sola fide. Luther later wrote that when this understanding broke open, he felt as if he had entered paradise. It sounds like it's like a mental break and like an epiphany kind of moment.
Yes. Think of it as, okay, you've been abused your whole life. All right.
Yeah.
And you go to therapy and then you have the realization, it wasn't my fault.
I guess, it's just weird to me because it's like no one was saying anything was his fault. Even he, like the priest there was like, bro, relax.
No,
it's like he put a lot on himself.
They weren't. It was the book itself. The book itself was saying everything is your fault. Yeah. If you don't follow this, it's all your fault. If you don't follow the doctrine to the T, it's all your fault.
It wasn't even the book so much as the way it was being taught, right? Because like
exactly,
the book, he's reading the same book again. It's his translation, his understanding of it. Mm-hmm. But the thing is you weren't supposed to get creative with your understanding of shit.
Correct.
Right. And this is like, okay, this part, it's like, okay, legit. Like, again, I'm not a super religious person. Personally, I think, like, who cares, like, what the interpretation is? Because, but, like, if you are on that train and drinking that Kool-Aid, I get, like, maybe having a different opinion on how a couple sentences are phrased, right? So, and people died for that up until this point. So, but yeah, so for him, it was a profound personal liberation. It was also, whether Luther fully understood it yet or not, a demolition charge placed under the entire sacramental economy of the medieval church. Because let's think about this, right? If salvation came through faith alone, then that entire apparatus of indulgences, penances, pilgrimages where you paid for, like, it's like you could pay for things that were blessed, right? All of that, right? Like, if you think about how many people went on pilgrimages to, like, go get special holy water to cure, like, their loved ones.
Yep.
Right? Thinking that's the only way. Or, like, going there, right, because they were dying from cancer, and they're like, I have to go to this place to be cured. Or, like, when they had, like, hot dick, that was a big one, and they had to get the cure for that only Mary could take care of, I guess, at that specific location. I don't know how much Mary cared about their hot dick or would even appreciate that they had it in the first place, but,
Okay, I feel like I am missing so much context here. I need to know exactly what this is. Is this going to be an episode? Do we do this on Patreon? I need to know what this is. Hold on.
At least one thing that I can think of off the top of my head that was having issues with, like, they didn't know it was hot dick, but, like, they're like, why does it burn every time and I can't have kids? So,
my God.
correct. It happens more often than you think. So until quite recently, back, and specifically, like, the magic holy water, I'm thinking of, like, the of Lourdes in France, right? That was a big thing. To the point where they were almost running out of water, so now they have to, like, ration that shit out. So, yeah. Anyway, so there's that.
Oh my God. God help me, I have hot dick. What the fuck? What the fuck?
That one out. They're going too far. But yes, that was something that happened. But, like, pilgrimages were, of course, for other things as well. It's just, like, a lot of the times, like, it was just sometimes an act of faith, right? Other times it was like, okay, how do I get closer to God? I have to go on all these pilgrimages, right? And the farther you go, the more access you have to heaven, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that, and thinking that it's a must, that you should at least make one, right? And then, like, so, like, this is and they're making money on all this, right? Like, the hotels, the church, like, oh yeah, you can stay here for a price, right? Like, and it's like in the whole economy based off of this, right? And it has been for up until that point, like, almost 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, depending on where you are, right? So, because I believe Rome formally adopted Christianity at, like, 500, so
Yeah, it's
other
been going
areas
on
taking
for a hot minute.
Right. And this guy is like, wait a minute, we don't need to do that. I mean, like, you can like, hear me out. You can pray to God yourself. If you got hot dick, you can pray yourself. You don't have to travel for that one. Amongst other things. So anyway.
I have so much concern.
And so the other thing too is, like, this idea of priestly mediation was not just corrupt in its execution, it was wrong at conception. It's like, no, like, you shouldn't have specialized people. You could almost, he's making the argument it's very pagan, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a special, like, you can have your own personal connection and should have your own personal connection. You shouldn't be relying on priests to talk to God for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's giving Babylon, it's giving Egypt, where you have like a priest and like a lady in a room who's like an oracle, right? And it's not wrong. He's not wrong.
No, he's not, but also
I'm not talking hate on that. It's not. I'm not saying like he's not wrong. Like I'm not saying that. Like he's saying it is like it's negative. I'm not saying it's negative, but he's also not wrong if you think that thing's negative. So like, like there's some similarities that could be made. So, so anyway, the immediate trigger was a man named Johann Tetzel, a Dominican friar of considerable theatrical gifts and a rather flexible ethics. Honestly, he sounds fun. He sounds way more fun than Luther.
Indeed.
I love me a good charlatan. I don't know. I think not like I don't want to be scammed, but I love like reading about scammers. They're like way more fun and cool to read about. I'm like
to read about to counter, absolutely not. But
within reason, as long as you know they're a scammer, as long as you know they're a charlatan, they're still more fun. I know you
bullshit, and so I ain't trusting anything you say. Keep going, funny man. Keep going.
Exactly. Like they're at least gonna have fun. Luther's a stick in the mud. Ugh. He gives me anxiety. He gives me anxiety. I'm like, ugh. He's one of those. So anyway, he was selling indulgences, not Luther, Tetzel. Just want to make that clear. Was selling indulgences just outside of Saxony to raise money for the rebuilding of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Think of him as a medieval televangelist, right? With a papal license. It's giving megachurch for sure.
A little bit. A lot of bet.
I mean, yeah, it's almost like your taxpayer dollar, because this is tithes and stuff which you were expected to pay, right? Like that's not an optional thing. When they go around the church, they're holding out the basket. It's not like maybe I'll hand something in. No, it's like they come knocking on your door, and it's like, here are your taxes, here's your tithes. You have to pay them. It's still a law in some parts of Germany, actually. So
crazy.
Like, yeah, in certain parts of Germany, like if you were like moving over there, and they ask you like what your religion is, no matter what it is, you say no. I'm not religious. And like, because Americans do that all the time because we're loud and proud, I guess, about being Christian. And they're like, are you sure? Wink. Because apparently it like automatically gets taxed out of your stuff and it goes to the nearest whatever you are church, right?
Ew.
Doesn't mean that's the church you go to. But you don't have an option in paying them either.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely not.
But that's based off all this shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's that. At least that's local. This isn't even local. So, anyway, his pitch, right, allegedly included the rhyming tagline: "As soon as the coin is in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs." That's fun. See, this guy's fun. He's coming up with rhymes and everything. He rapping,
he's doing something.
Yeah, like he's got a jingle and everything. I love it. As soon as the coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs. Yeah. See, let's get some like old timey 1930s ladies or 1940s ladies to do a song on that. Anyway.
I 1,000% would. Let's go.
So, the money, as it should be noted, was also partly going to pay off the enormous debts of that Archbishop, Albert of Brandenburg, who had incurred to buy his ecclesiastical offices in the first place.
That's crazy.
So, like, you went into debt to buy the office, and it's like, that's okay, because I'm just going to tax the shit out of everyone. Everyone wins. So,
oh my.
Yeah. By the way, this was a transaction that required its own special papal dispensation, itself purchased for a fee.
Ugh.
Yeah.
The
Like, no one's
bureaucratic
clean.
corruption layering is terrible.
Yeah. It's like even the freaking Pope was involved. So anyway, Luther was furious, I guess. I mean, it's one of those things that I don't know if it's really directly affecting him, but he's just like one of those people. He's like a keyboard warrior, you know?
Oh, he's a keyboard warrior. Oh, no.
Anyway, I mean, he's not wrong in being upset, but it's just interesting how upset he gets. That completely redefines the rest of Western civilization and potentially the world if you include all the colonization that happened because of missionary work. But anyway,
Yeah.
so he drafted those 95 theses that he was super famous for. And he was challenging the theology and abuse of indulgences and circulated them in October of 1517. They were written in Latin and framed as an academic invitation to debate. But this was not yet a clean break from Rome, right? Like, let's not get crazy, right? It's always written off as like this. It's like he nails them into the door. And that was like, essentially that moment he had broken away from the church and it changed everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't know that's what was going to happen. He's just like, we should all have a public debate, and he's nailing this crap up for people to read, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, as we said, of like many a rich politician today, they don't like it when you point out that they're corrupt.
Oh, no, they don't. Me?
It's
Wrong? Never.
System is supposed to be in their party. I mean, they're on their side. So, but, you know, so sweet baby Luther still believed that the Pope, properly informed, would of course act to reform the abuses. He didn't know this was going on, right? Like that, even though the freaking Pope had approved this, it must have just been rubber stamped by someone else, right?
Totally. The Pope would
Right?
never.
This was not the same Pope who's like, now that I'm Pope, I can't wait to enjoy it. Right? Anyway. This was, as it turned out, an optimistic reading of Pope Leo X, who, upon receiving reports of the situation, initially dismissed it as, quote, a drunken German monk who would sober up and fall in line.
Oh, no.
Well, he would not sober up because he was not drunk. I'm just putting that out there. I mean, maybe, but that's not why. So he comes off as the kind of guy who's a buzzkill, and I don't think he's drinking a lot. I could be wrong, but
Indeed.
And the printing press would make sure the world knew. Gutenberg's invention, barely 60 years old, turned what should have been a local academic dispute into a continent-wide conversation within weeks. Luther wrote up a directness and vernacular force that printers loved and ordinary readers devoured. So essentially, he took the originally Latin really meant for only the scholarly type people to read, and he translated it.
Oh, God.
Yep.
Oh, then it becomes drama, and people are like, oh my, drama?
What's the tea, honey?
What's
I mean, again,
tea?
not everyone's reading it because most of them are still illiterate as fuck. But like,
Correct.
now you the merchant class and like people who maybe don't read tons of Latin all the time are able to like devour this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because typically, like the only people who really know Latin, like hardcore enough to read it on the reg, are people who were either ecclesiastically like trained, went to schools through that, right? Monks and stuff, and like royals, right? Not even every prince was gonna know, you know. So like if you're putting it into the vernacular, now everyone can read this shit. So that being said, within months, his arguments were being read across Europe. It was, in modern terms, the first viral media event in history.
Rome's attempts to rein Luther in only hardened him. The pivotal confrontation came at Leipzig debate of 1519, where the skilled theologian Johann Eck, sharp, experienced, and playing for keeps, maneuvered Luther into defending positions associated with Jan Hus, a Bohemian reformer burned as a heretic a century earlier. Pushed into a corner, Luther admitted Hus had been right on some points and that the church councils themselves could err.
Mon Dieu.
Mon Dieu!
Mon Dieu.
This was the real rapture. This was the real rupture. Not the indulgences.
The rapture wasn't a
Not the
thing
fucking
yet.
rapture. Oh my God. That's hilarious.
Fun fact, guys. Rapture wasn't even a thing till the end of the 19th century. It was a 19th century invention.
Yes,
so all these God-fearing folk worried about raptures, like it's been around, like, oh, no, that was an invention of like some wackadoodle in America in the 19th century. Anyway, continue with the rupturing.
Continuing with the rupturing, because it's not rapturing. This was the real rupture. It wasn't the indulgences, the councils. The claim that no human institution, not pope, not council, was beyond error. Scripture alone was the final authority. In 1521, summoned before the Imperial Assembly at the Diet of Worms and ordered by Emperor Charles V himself to recant, Luther refused. Here, I know. Here I stand. Here I stand. I can do no other. God help me. He was placed under the imperial ban, declared an outlaw who could be killed without legal consequence, and promptly vanished. Spirited away to the Wartburg Castle by his protector, Elector Frederick III of Saxony, in a staged kidnapping dramatic enough to satisfy any thriller reader.
Yeah, and this is that moment where, like, when we talked about the Holy Roman Empire of it all, that's why it was important, because you're like, hold the fuck up. So the emperor himself said, anyone can kill you, and someone had balls enough to just whisk him away. In any other court, right, that would be like, no one's doing that, right? But because this is the Holy Roman Empire, essentially, once he's in that territory, like, the emperor can't do shit.
Exactly. So he spent nearly a year there in disguise as Junker George, Knight George, tormented by depression, insomnia, vivid encounters with what he was convinced was the literal devil, and severe digestive trouble that he documented with a frankness future hagiographers found uncomfortable.
Oh, he had tummy troubles.
He had tummy troubles. In this condition, he translated the entire New Testament into German in 11 weeks. The resulting text was of such literary power that it effectively created a standard written High German, doing for the German language what the King James Bible would later do for English. Whatever Luther's faults, and they were considerable, the man could write.
And the reason this is kind of important, right? Up until this point, you have, and you still do to a degree, like you have all these dialects and stuff, right? And when you say dialects, it's pretty much like a completely different language, right?
Yes.
And that's because no one's really reading the same thing. And I will give the Bible that. Once everyone's reading, what is the one book that everyone, especially during these next few centuries, is guaranteed to read? The Bible. So if it's all printed the same, right? That's how you're going to learn your English. That's how kids are taught for a long time how to read, right? So you all are learning from the same book, essentially, with the same words, the same everything, like sentence structure, all of it, right? So then
it becomes standard.
Right. In a passive way, you've accidentally standardized your language.
Indeed. So the Reformation happened in Germany first. Not France, not Italy, not Spain. And this wasn't coincidence. The Holy Roman Empire was, structurally speaking, tailor-made for a religious revolution to take root and survive. As we covered last time, it was definitely not a centralized state, but a sprawling, ungovernable patchwork of princes, bishops, free cities, imperial knights, and peasants, held together by tradition, negotiation, and the perpetual inability of any single power to dominate the rest. The emperor, in this period, the Habsburg Charles V, who also ruled Spain, the Netherlands, and much of the Americas, making him by any measure the most powerful man in the world, was still dependent on the cooperation of the German princes to function. He could not simply crush the Lutheran movement the way a French king might have. He needed those princes. They knew it. They used it. Many of those princes had excellent reasons to protect the new movement, and not all of them were purely theological. There was a deep, specifically German resentment of Rome, a long-standing fury about the rivers of German money flowing south to Italy for papal taxes, for indulgences, for Italian bishops installed in German sees by papal appointment. When Luther struck his blow, he was igniting a grievance that had been accumulating for generations. And when Protestant princes began seizing church properties, dissolving monasteries, claiming church lands, redistributing centuries of accumulated institutional wealth into their own treasuries, the economic incentive added considerable force to the theological conviction. The Reformation was, among its many other identities, one of the largest property transfers in European history. God's work and personal enrichment, as it turned out, were entirely compatible. Germany's free imperial cities were equally crucial. Nuremberg, Augsburg, Strasbourg, Frankfurt, prosperous, literate, politically sophisticated, populated by merchants and artisans who read, who brought pamphlets, and who were deeply invested in questions of piety, conscience, and civic identity. The Reformation spread through these cities with the speed of rumor and the permanence of a legal code.
So just to also give you another idea of why Germany, right, like German states, right, may not have been super keen with the Vatican, right, is this idea. So essentially what happened is this. The last quote-unquote culturally German Pope was 1057. To give you an idea of how long it would be before another German Pope would come to exist, that would not be until Pope Benedict the 16th in 2005.
Good God.
Right, so like taxation without representation, am I right? Like, it's like, think about, like, all these popes died quick too. Like that last German one lasted 2 years, right? He was 1055 to 1057, and all these different, right? And not once were Rod, you got Rodrigo Borgia over there having like a whole ass hooker for a wife.
Oh God,
like an illegitimate kid. All right. And yet, like, it's just like there's going to be a disconnect after a while, right? And I'm not, without going, I don't know if that was intentional or not. It just seems weird, right? Because if you combine all these like German speaking territories together, even today, that would be like a third of Europe, right? And you're telling me when a third of Europe is culturally similar to you, right? Not one of them came from your area. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to think by the time Luther's showing up, that's 500 years since the last German Pope.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It seems intentional. And like the Holy Roman Empire and the Pope, as we kind of discussed last time, notoriously kind of didn't get along.
No.
Like, remember when we were talking about the Holy Roman Empire that had a whole crusade where he became really good friends with the Muslim guys? He had a crusade where he didn't kill anybody, and he got excommunicated a shit ton of times. Literally, Holy Roman Empire is in the name. Holy Roman Emperor got kicked out.
Yeah.
That
guy.
So, like, they're already primed to split. So, That being said, no revolution is carried out by one person alone, and the Reformation's survival owed much to the men who translated Luther's theology into functioning institutions, as it did to Luther's own ferocious energy. Philip Melanchthon arrived in Wittenberg in 1518, aged 21, as a professor of Greek. Slight, meticulous, and temperamentally cautious where Luther was combustible. Luther was immediately and genuinely impressed. Where Luther was an Augustinian theologian of volcanic force and occasional recklessness, Melanchthon was a humanist trained in the careful philosophical methods of Erasmus. Together, they were an extraordinarily complementary, the prophet and the systemizer. Melanchthon wrote the Loci Communes in 1521, the first systematic theology of the Reformation, and in 1530 drafted the Augsburg Confession, the formal statement of Lutheran doctrine presented to Emperor Charles V in the language deliberately measured enough to leave a theoretical door open for reconciliation. The door did not open.
No.
But the Augsburg Confession remains the foundational doctrinal document of Lutheranism to this very day. Melanchthon Melanchthon also reorganized schools and universities across Protestant Germany with such thoroughness that he earned the title Preceptor Germanae, or Teacher of Germany, and the educational network he built was arguably a more durable achievement than anything Luther himself produced. So I gotta say I like this for them. Like you got like, you know, like they're like one of those old cop shows, right? You got the guy who's kicking down doors, and then the other one who's like kind of like, it's not that neither one of them are good or bad, but like you got the one who's mouthy and loud and boisterous, and then you got the one who's like, remember, bud, like you gotta read them their Miranda rights. You can't just fucking kick down doors. Like, I gotta have a warrant, bud. But less celebrated, but equally essential, was Johannes Bugenhagen. Bugenhagen. That's such a German name. Bugenhagen. Johannes Bugenhagen. See, I say angry.
I'm sorry, German always sounds angry. You can't have a German name and it doesn't sound angry. I'm so sorry.
So, Johannes Bugenhagen, who also wrote the actual constitutional documents establishing Lutheran church governance in Hamburg, Lübeck, Brunswick, Pomerania, Denmark, and Holstein. He was also Luther's own pastor in Wittenberg. Hearing his confessions of this poor guy, presiding over family ceremonies, and providing the kind of steady institutional competence that visionary movements desperately need and rarely celebrate. Where Luther and Melanchthon were architects of the theology, Bugenhagen built the plumbing.
Bugenhagen.
You gotta have a crappa.
It's all.
Oh no! I just had like a picture of him being a toilet going nom 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 nom.
Oh no! Why would you do that?
I forgot to take my meds today, and you could tell.
It's okay. You're more fun this
for
way.
real
It's
right
all
now.
good.
I have more fun this way. So, I don't get anything done, but it takes us like twice as long to record anything. But hey, more fun.
Hey, it's fun.
So, it's fun. We have fun here.
Oh God!
It's like so
We have fun here.
No.
Just forced smiles.
We have fun here.
Uncanny Valley. We have fun here.
So when Courtney and I met, we worked at this place. And I won't name names because I don't know. I don't want to get sued. Anyway, so the point was we worked there, and like on the whiteboard where like all of us had like, we had this like system where we had ups because we were in sales, and it was like written in like big letters like, we have fun here.
It was so cringe. It was so cringe, and unfortunately, that was the worst boss I've ever had in my life. So it was from somebody who could not have fun.
Correct.
Oh.
And I remember just like anytime we would be ranting or upset, be like, but we have fun here. We have fun here.
We have fun here. Oh God.
That's how we bonded. So anyway, so
this is how we found each other.
So the result was the Peasants' War of 1524 to 1525, the largest popular uprising in German history before the 19th century. That would be those lovely, lovely 1848 revolutions, the springtime of revolution, and where, like communism, first took root. So, yeah. Across southern and central Germany, peasants rose against their landlords. Oh, it's definitely giving communists. Anyway, invoking the very language of Christian freedom that Luther had made famous. Munzer led the rebel forces in Thuringia. In Thuringia with the convention, Jesus Christ. In Thuringia with the conviction of a man who believed that God had personally guaranteed victory. Before the climactic Battle of Frankenhausen, he reportedly told his followers, You can't.
You have to. It's required.
Frankenhausen. You don't even see this part, but I literally throw my head into it every time. I'm like, what? Like the heavy nod.
No,
like,
all I can think is
like
the fact that like German for hospital Krankenhaus, like fucking, like I can't not.
I feel like I'm
mentally ill.
I feel like I'm at a Batman rally every time I say something German like it. It's like, but anyway, I don't throw up any Roman salutes though.
Oh, so anyway. God, no.
So he reportedly told his followers to not fear the prince's artillery, that God had spoken to him, and that he would catch the cannonballs in his sleeves.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
He could not catch the cannonballs in his sleeves. The battle was a slaughter. Professional armies tore through the peasant forces in hours. Somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 people died.
Well,
yeah.
Those damn sleeves just malfunctioned.
I love that. It's like you got like the narrator. No, let's redo this with like Morgan Freeman style narrator, right? So it's like, don't worry, man. I shall catch those cannonballs with my sleeves. He could not catch the cannonballs. The battle was a slaughter. I don't know why.
We have an accent now.
Come on, Morgan Freeman, we need you. Anyway, the point was that Meltzer was captured, tortured until he confessed whatever his captors wanted, and then beheaded.
Ugh.
And then his head was displayed on a pole as a lesson in the distance between divine inspiration and military reality. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. So Luther's response to the uprising was one of the ugliest episodes of his personal career. He first wrote cautiously, then, as violence escalated, published a pamphlet of startling savagery, urging the princes to show no mercy and, quote, let whoever can stab, smite, and slay, end quote.
Slay.
Let who can stab, smite, and slay. Slay. I bet you direct quote Martin Luther. Slay. Tummy troubles. So,
oh no.
The uprising,
oh no, he's got the hot dick.
Oh no. Anyone didn't have hot dick, it was him. I don't know. Fine.
No. Oh my god.
He's like, I have to, if like, I wish we could travel back in time. I don't know his like love history, but if I were to blindly place money towards something, right, without any background on it, and someone was like, "Hey, would you bet money that this guy's ace?" Yes,
Oh, guaranteed.
I would bet on that.
Guaranteed.
Like our luck is that he has a wife and like 10 kids, but like I don't know offhand. So anyway, I think he might actually have a wife now that I think about that. I think that's a whole thing. But anyway,
see.
We'll see. Not important to this story. Not that she's not important, but if she exists. But anyway. Mm-hmm. The uprising was crushed with ferocity that matched the instruction. Luther's pamphlet permanently alienated the peasant classes who had embraced him as their champion, and the Reformation in Germany settled into its definitive social character. It would reform the church, but it would uphold the established order absolutely. Like they're like, look, we just said you could read the Bible. We're not giving you rights, you peasants. Christ. Anyway.
God.
Mon Dieu.
Mon Dieu.
So, Mon Dieu. The poor could have the theology. The princes would keep the land.
Oh, of course, because can't let the peasants have anything actually worth value.
Like, giving will drain the swamp energy, and then we turn the reflecting swamp. So
indeed. By 1555, Charles V, having spent decades trying and failing to reunite Germany under Catholic orthodoxy, exhausted by warfare and political frustration, and on the verge of the abdication that would end his remarkable career, accepted reality. The Peace of Augsburg established the principle of cuius regio, ius religio, whose realm, his religion. Each prince chose Lutheranism or Catholicism for his territory. Subjects who disagreed could immigrate, which is a polite way of saying they could leave everything they owned behind and start over somewhere else. A freedom of notably limited appeal.
Also, just like anything today, right? Like we have some stuff going on, and people have chosen to emigrate or talk about, like, I'm so glad I got to leave. All these celebrities did, right? Mm-hmm. Only certain people can afford to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Some people could afford to maybe leave everything behind, start over, or had properties in those territories. That doesn't help the peasants.
No, it does not. When
they don't really
literally everything you have is everything you have. You don't have like liquid assets.
Also, a lot of them tied to the land. They couldn't leave even if they wanted to.
Exactly.
Like legally, they can't leave. Like, so.
And so they have to adopt the religion of whomever is head of said land. That's ridiculous.
Correct.
It was a pragmatic settlement masquerading as a principled one. And it carried the seeds of catastrophe inside it with the innocence of a time bomb. It recognized only Lutheranism and Catholicism, not Calvinism, which was already spreading aggressively through German territories and would soon become the confession of the Palatinate, one of the empire's most significant princes. It left the question of church property seized after 1552 deliberately unresolved, creating a festering legal ambiguity that neither side ever truly accepted. And it gave no rights whatsoever to ordinary subjects, only to their rulers, which meant that whenever a prince converted or died and was succeeded by someone of a different faith, entire populations could find that their religion was made illegal overnight. Luther himself died in 1546, before Augsburg, having lived to see his solitary protest become the confession of half the German princes. His final years were marked by increasing irascibility, physical illnesses, and a harshness towards those he considered enemies that went well beyond theological disagreement. In 1543, his 1543 treatise on the Jews and their lies, Jesus Christ,
Mon Dieu!
Mon Dieu! Was a text of systematic, vicious anti-Semitism, recommending the burning of synagogues, the destruction of Jewish homes, the confiscation of Jewish property, and the imposition of forced labor. Oh, God, this is where Hitler got it. Okay.
I was going to say, it seems like Luther would like a certain mustache man.
He
Just
would
saying.
definitely like a certain mustache man with a shit-eating grin. Okay.
Mm.
Woo! Absolutely
And to think,
not.
fun fact, Luther won like Man of the Millennium for Time Magazine back in like 2000.
Concernicus
Concernicus.
Maximus. Okay.
And I learned about none of this in school with Luther.
No.
I didn't learn about your anxiety disorder, the fact that he's like pretty much like kill the peasants, slay
Kill the
girl,
peasants and kill the
his
Jews, apparently.
raging
What the
anti-Semitism
fuck?
agenda. Yeah.
Luther had initially hoped that Jews, exposed to his purified Christianity freed from Catholic corruption, would convert en masse. When they did not, he turned on them with a fury that cannot be explained away or contextualized into acceptability. The text was cited approvingly by the Nazis 400 years later. It is the darkest stain on a legacy already complicated by the Peasants' War, and it admits no comfortable defense. No, fuck this guy. I already knew he was a piece of shit, but come on, my guy.
Yeah,
What the fuck?
And the thing is, especially here in Protestant America, like, he's touted around as like this great man, like that the world was forever changed by what he did. And it's true, I suppose. It was forever changed. But to act like that it was all good in the hood, right?
Yeah, no, like this is not anything that I learned in school. Like I was in the AP classes. I was doing good.
Mm-hmm.
This was not mentioned.
I didn't learn about this until college.
This is
and even then
wild. Ugh.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church's response to the Reformation was, in its early stages, a masterclass in institutional denial. Leo X dismissed Luther as a drunken monk. His successors hoped the problem would resolve itself, or be solved by the emperor's armies, or simply go away.
Oh, that's like me with my ADHD. I'm just like,
congratulations. Guess what? It doesn't go away, honey.
I know. I'm imagining that little dog, though, from the meme, but he's wearing like a Pope hat, and he's like, this is fine.
This is fine.
Everything's fine.
Honestly, I need that picture in my house. This is fine. That's how I feel most of the time. This is fine. It's fine. Oh my gosh. By the time the church assembled in serious response, Protestantism had permanently claimed half of Europe. So they literally had like the Roman, like, it's no big deal. We're good.
Right. It's funny because the Romans kind of did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, you guys inherited that one too.
Absolutely.
But, it gives, like, to me, the credence that all these different empires that try to, like, reflect Rome, right? They might not inherit all of, like, Rome, but they inherit the idolized parts. And this is, like, the entropy of it all. It's like, oh, well, we are this powerful institution. We've always existed, even though you haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, not learning the lesson goes, like, it will eventually go away. And it didn't for your predecessor either. So it's entropy. And by the time you actually do something about it, you don't have the power that you did.
Exactly.
The world is completely...
It's a different place.
People are dying, right? Because your empire fell apart. Because of just lack of doing anything. So...
Exactly. When that response finally came, it was substantial. The Council of Trent, meeting in 3 long phases between 1545 and 1563 in northern Italy, was the most important Catholic council since the early church, and it moved in 2 directions at once. On doctrine, it drew clear, unambiguous lines. Salvation required faith and works. Scripture and tradition together were authoritative, not Scripture alone. The 7 sacraments were valid and efficacious. The Latin Vulgate was the Church's official Bible. The Mass involved the real transubstantiation of bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. Every major Protestant position was explicitly rejected. There would be no theological middle ground, no irenical,
Mhm.
no irenical compromise. The age of hoping the schism could be healed by gentle conversation was over. On internal discipline, Trent was equally serious. Bishops were required to actually live in their diocese, a reform that sounds trivially obvious until you realize how many had been collecting revenues from sees they had never visited.
Mhm.
Seminaries were established to actually educate priests rather than simply ordaining whoever showed up.
I was just gonna say, you know what this gives? Like the fact that, like, okay, you can't just collect revenue from seas you've never visited. It's giving like elected officials in this country who never go to their states.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
you know?
and it's giving Snowmageddon, Ted Cruz. Bye.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's just like, okay, but yet they always. To be fair, that's kind of their own fault because they keep voting this fucker in. So
They do. That's why I left. That's one of the reasons.
these people weren't being voted in. Yeah, like this was just, but it's giving
Well,
the same
they
vibe.
are, but they're
otherwise.
not being voted in by the people. They're being voted in by their
No,
friends.
no, like they're getting voted in. Like it's not even really voted in. It's like you apply for the job and you have like a board,
Mhm.
you know, and then that board approves because you paid for it.
Exactly.
It's like you paid for your diploma.
Rich kid problems.
Yeah.
All right. The sale of indulgences was regulated. Nepotism was curtailed. For the first time in generations, the moral quality of the clergy became a genuine institutional priority rather than an embarrassing topic to be avoided. I wish they would kind of do that nowadays, because maybe then they wouldn't have so many goddamn pedophiles. Woo! Did I say
The
that?
thing is, like, to be fair, that's all out there, and just people don't care. They'll literally change their whole minds. It's like these same people who were like, "Show us the Epstein files." They're like, when they saw that all their people they voted for, when they're like, "Well, I mean, she was hot." Like, you know, like you're like, "What the fuck?" Like,
Oh no,
what?
absolutely. There was a billboard that I saw that was apparently in Texas. I was like, pedos aren't that bad. Do fucking
Right.
what?
Like, right, and it's like, I don't know. Sometimes when these kind of people, you know, and if at best they're embarrassed and then just don't talk about it. Like that's still happening today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we see it on a daily basis now. Like that's like the strategy. You see it during like press conferences and stuff, not just here, but like elsewhere in the world too. You know, like if a reporter brings up a sensitive subject or maybe some embarrassment, like, hey, remember that time you said that you were going to totally clean out that pond? I mean the reflecting pool, and you know, it's got even more algae now, and then they just don't answer the question. They pretend they don't hear it.
Exactly.
Like that's what they do now. They don't even
They don't acknowledge it.
You don't have account. You're creating a culture of no accountability.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The sharp instrument of renewal was human. Ignatius of Loyola, a Spanish soldier turned mystic after a cannonball shattered his leg at the siege of Pamplona.
Also, he was trying to catch cannonballs with his pant legs.
Oh no, that didn't work well enough for the sleeves. Why would he think the pant legs would work? Come on, man.
He lived, so maybe it was successful. I don't know.
But he founded the Society of Jesus in 1540, and the Jesuits became the Counter-Reformation's most formidable force. Rigorously disciplined, intellectually formidable, and directly answerable to the Pope. They built schools of extraordinary quality across Catholic Europe and became the most effective missionaries in history, carrying Catholicism to Japan, China, India, and the Americas with a cultural sophistication and intellectual seriousness that sets them apart from almost every previous missionary enterprise. In Europe, they were masters of court influence, education, and debate, winning back Poland, much of Germany, and Bohemia through persuasion, political maneuvering, and the patient building of institutions rather than force. They are grade A brainwashers.
Mm-hmm.
These kind of people must be destroyed.
Well, I mean, so it's interesting. First of all, I also want to make the joke because it was a Spanish soldier that maybe when he shattered his leg from a cannonball, it was extreme soccer because FIFA's going on right now. So
Oh no!
a
No
long
one expects
tradition
the Spanish Inquisition. Oh,
now you can have that image of like some priest in old timey priest robes trying to like kick a cannonball like it's a soccer ball. It's like it's in their blood. And so, anyway, it's like an urge he couldn't resist.
oh my
So,
god!
second of all, I can't wait to talk. So next season we're going to probably talk about Japan, and maybe at some point we'll get to have a little fun chat about how this rearing its ugly head. Third, want to point out that it's very interesting, right? Like, so we just talked about how the printing press and translating everything into German, right, really is what pushed like this movement so far and so quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you would expect like all the German-speaking world to have pretty much converted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, no, it was like really half and half. Like when you think of like later on, like the Habsburgs and like Austria's German, right? Like they're German speaking, yet they were strongly Catholic, like all of like what would be like Bohemia, which is like where the Czech Republic and things like, well, Czechoslovakia, all that is, right? That was also, a Catholic stronghold, still is, I believe. So like, it's interesting, right? Mm-hmm. That they were despite having the fucking printing press working against them, honestly impressive that they kept those strongholds, right? And they were big ones that would be influential later. So with that being said, let's talk about my favorite subject. The arts became theology by other means. The Baroque, Bernini's overwhelming architecture, Caravaggio's theatrical light slashing through the darkness, also Gentileschi, Artemisia, finger snaps, love her, right? The magnificent polyphonic cascades of Palestrina was the answer to Protestant austerity. Because the Protestants, right, stripped the walls bare.
Ugh.
Right, the Puritan of it all.
Ugh.
Not all of them, right? Like the Anglicans still had stained glass and things like that, right? Like, so you had some Protestant movements, right, that were still cool with some of that shit. But like the further Protestant you go, the less you see of it, right? Like Rights of Puritans, where it's just like a bare wall. The art was idolatry, like, oh, they should be reading, but like the Catholic Church had always used paintings, right, as a way to tell these stories, right? And as a wee Catholic boy, not that I was really Catholic, or anything, but my family was Catholic, like whatever, right? Mm-hmm. I remember going to church and like that was the shit I was looking at, was the paintings and shit, because they were sick. People are bleeding and shit. Like it was a dick. But like these are still like the big movers in art, right? Think about this time period. Who are the big artists, right? Mm-hmm. You see it in France, Italy, Spain, right? Not really German. I mean, like there's some, right? But they're going to be doing more like everyday scenes, right? So, but we really have, and like the continued push now for arts development, we really do have to thank the Catholic Church for at this point.
Well, because they were the patron of it. Like realistically, they were the patron of it. Art thrives when you pay artists. Yes, and the thing was, it's like it's also does in these Protestant countries affect them too, because the church and the freaking Pope are still funding these things. You get Caravaggio. You get Gentileschi, right, who are doing paintings and making these huge breakthroughs, which then German people and German and Netherlands and those masters, right, are using for their own artwork of more mundane scenes, perhaps, but they're still doing that. They're putting that drama with light and texture. And that wouldn't have happened if the Catholic Church had also decided to meet them halfway. Be like, you're right. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this art stuff so much. No, and realistically, from what I understand in the Catholic train of thought, art is an aspect of God in the first place. And so, like, you're expressing it, it is a gift from God. So it's a crime not to do it, you know?
Yep. Yep. And so, where the Protestant churches stripped the walls bare, Catholic churches cranked it to an 11. So they filled, to the point of almost being tacky, filled every surface with, I love the tacky, with overwhelming sensory argument of divine glory. In fact, Trent had explicitly sanctioned religious images as aids to devotion, and Catholic artists took the mandate seriously. I mean, essentially, it's propaganda. Like one side's got the printing press, the other side's got the visuals, right?
Yep.
Both, and honestly, it appeals more to the peasants who are largely illiterate still, right? Luther made it a point that he doesn't give a fuck about the peasants, okay? And the Catholics are very locked in on that, as we shall see. They really try to make, especially like when they're doing missionary work, like really appealing as like, hey, like it's interesting because like you can make some arguments for Protestantism, especially later on, like with the Puritan of it all. But yeah, it's even then, it's still very much like it's like an educated middle class at best, not like the raw peasantry of it all. So in Germany specifically, Bavaria under the Witzelbach, which I'm going to say that with my German accent, Witzelbach dynasty became the great bastion of Counter-Reformation Catholicism, hosting Jesuits, enforcing Tridentine reform, building churches of almost aggressive splendor. And the Catholic South and Lutheran North were hardening into distinct civilizations inside the same theoretical empire. The Augsburg settlement held for 60 years. Then it collapsed in the most destructive war Europe would experience until the 20th century. And it's worth being honest about what that war actually was. Beneath the confessional banners and the theological justifications, it began almost farcically in Prague in 1618. Protestant Bohemian nobles, furious at Habsburg Catholic encroachments on their religious freedoms, seized two of the emperor's royal governors and threw them out a castle window.
Ah, yes.
We talked about this a little bit last time.
I love this word so much. Please say the word. I need the word.
What was it called? I got it because I didn't write it down. Hold on. It's
defenestration.
It's fenestration, right? It sounds so sophisticated. And we're going to get there. The men fell roughly 50 feet and survived. Landing, as contemporaries noted, with varying degrees of pious or sardonic satisfaction in a pile of manure.
Huzzah.
It's giving that scene from like Back to the Future where he like crashes the car and lands in like big old cart of cow shit. And they're like, thank God that this cow shit was here. Catholics attributed their survival to angelic intervention. That's one way of putting it.
Something. I mean,
Protestants.
God is the shit, apparently.
But Mon Dieu. Protestants credited the dung, which honestly, for once I'm on their side of them, like, I mean, it wasn't angels, guys, who fell in shit. Like, relax. Both sides then.
Only they would really sit there and be like, we fell in a pile of shit. That was intervention. That was divine intervention. You fell in a pile of shit.
And the Protestants were like, also, why did you think we threw you out that window? We knew the shit was there. And
Exactly.
we weren't like trying to kill you. Anyway, probably were. But anyway. Both sides then proceeded to spend the next 30 years killing enormous numbers of people over theological disagreements. Yay! That this defenestration was taken to represent. So they all fought on whether it was shit or angels.
It was shit.
Angels. Angelic shit.
Angelic shit.
And now I said angelic shit, I think of like Roger from American Dad, and he's holding up a golden turd with jewels in it. And it causes people to like kill their spouses and shit over it anyway. So because it's like Earth, it's a whole thing. Anyway, and that's literally what this is. So what followed was not in any meaningful sense a religious war, or at least it rapidly stopped being one. The 30 Years' War began as a conflict over Protestant liberties in Bohemia, became a struggle between Habsburgs and German Protestant princes, expanded when Denmark intervened on the Protestant side and was defeated, expanded further when Sweden, under the military genius Gustav Adolf, swept in and won devastating victories, before Gustav himself was killed in Lutzen in 1632. He's got a fun daughter. Got a real fun daughter.
All right.
So that's Christina of Sweden.
Oh, that's Christina of Sweden.
That's Christina of Sweden's dad. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And for a moment, he turns into like a body pillow or some shit for his wife after he died.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, imagine, being loved that much. Ugh.
It wasn't love. And he didn't like her that much. Anyway.
Oh.
So
I was trying to make it a good story. Now I'm concerned.
Oh, it's all concerning. All of this is. Anyway. So but weirdly enough, if you want a little bit of like faith restored, Christina of Sweden did stand up for Jews. So that was nice.
That's good.
Rome had like a fun little festival where they literally hunted them down in the streets, and Christina was like, that's in poor taste, guys. And she used to let them stay at her house during all that.
That's fucking
She's
horrific.
problematic for a lot of other reasons, but at least,
At least she's not an anti.
At least not enough to let people get literally like Hunger Games style or like Purge style hunted down for fun. So anyway, Gustav Adolf was killed, and then it reached its final revealing phase when Catholic France, under the direction of the very Catholic Cardinal Richelieu, who's pretty much running the country for a child, entered the war on the Protestant side. Not because Richelieu had suddenly developed Reformed theological sympathies, because he did not, but because weakening the Habsburgs served French strategic interest. God, it turned out, was not the primary stakeholder.
Go figure.
Go figure. And as in all of these sorts of things, right, the human cost was a catastrophe of a scale that is difficult to hold in the mind. But I feel like we'll try anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some regions of Germany lost a third or more of their entire population. Not like soldiers dying, right? Like their actual populations, like people, like just townspeople.
That's ridiculous.
The town of Magdeburg was sacked in 1631 by imperial forces, which, by the way, this is like their own subjects, right? In theory, right? So, in one of the most notorious atrocities of the war, where somewhere between 20,000 and 30,000 civilians were killed.
Good God.
And the city was burned so thoroughly that it ceased to meaningfully exist.
Oh.
For years.
Oh.
Yay. Armies moved across Germany like a slow-motion natural disaster, stripping the land of food, burning what they couldn't carry, and leaving plague in their wake. Because remember, the peasants are tied to the land, and the best way to hurt your enemy's bottom line is to kill all their peasants. Because the peasants are like property.
They are property at this point in time, which is a disgusting thing to even have to state, but ugh.
Yeah. Anyway, peasants who did survive, the soldiers died of famine. And peasants who survived famine died of plague.
God. They had no escape. They had no recourse. That
It's
is
like, so if it ever idealizes like this period, don't. You're more than likely dead. Anyway, so cities
No.
that had been cities that had been thriving centers of commerce and culture in 1618 were in just 30 years hollow shells by 1648. All of this killing, should be noted, accomplished essentially nothing of theological consequence. The Peace of Westphalia in 1648 reset the religious map largely to where it had been in 1624. Yeah, so 30 years they fought for it to be exactly the same.
For nothing. All the life lost. For nothing.
And just that one town. God damn. Like, that's crazy. So anyway, Catholics remained Catholic, Lutherans remained Lutheran. Calvinism was officially recognized.
I mean, yay, I guess.
No. The accommodation that Augsburg settlement had failed to make, right? 30 years of slaughter, an entire generation of demographic catastrophe, the destruction of much of Central Europe's accumulated wealth and population, and the outcome was roughly what a competent diplomat could have just have negotiated back in 1618. Yeah. The war did not resolve the religious question. It simply exhausted everyone so thoroughly that continuing to fight about it became unthinkable. It's giving World War I energy. But like,
Correct.
At least they figured it out. They didn't take 30 years to figure that out. Westphalia also established, I mean, to be fair, World War I was, worse. Like, not even as much on civilian, like, don't quote me on that, right? Like, at least we weren't, like, intentionally charging towns, killing 20,000 people, but, like, like, you sent your children to it, and they literally got put through a meat grinder.
Yep.
So...
You just fed bodies to the machine.
Correct. So it's like, instead of the machine coming to you, you sent it over. Ugh. Anyway, Westphalia also established an almost as a Westphalia also established, almost as a byproduct of this exhaustion, the principles of state sovereignty and non-interference in other states' internal affairs that formed the bedrock of modern international law. The idea that a state's religion was its own business, not a legitimate cause for invasion by its neighbors. So that was the 30 Years' War's most durable legacy.
It was mind your business. The most durable legacy was mind your fucking business.
I mean, you still kind of do it, but like, you just do it under a different reason, right? You can't just say that's the reason. It's like why we invade the Middle East so much.
Indeed.
Right. And because people go over there all the time. How we see this horrible stuff all the time, you know, where like people go like, well, at least we're showing them Jesus, you know, those heathens. Right. Like, that's not the reason we're there, but that's a byproduct of it. Ugh. Anyway. So, while it was the right conclusion, it just arrived approximately 300,000 to 500,000 casualties later than it needed to.
Ugh.
Yay.
When the guns finally stopped.
500,000 people to figure that one out.
That's crazy. Crazy.
What could have just been an email?
This meeting, this war could have been an email. This war could have been a contract.
It could have been a letter. Like, hey, you know, just
Good Lord.
story of our lives.
I know, right? Human history, it keeps repeating the needless things. When the guns finally stopped and the diplomats finished at Westphalia and the survivors emerged to count what remained, the Reformation's true legacy began to come into focus, and it was far more complex than either the reformers or their opponents had intended. The confessional map of Europe was fixed in outlines that broadly survive today. Scandinavia and northern Germany, Lutheran. Switzerland, the Netherlands, and Scotland, Calvinist. England, Anglican. Southern Germany, Italy, Spain, France, Poland, and Ireland, Catholic. The unity of Latin Christendom that had held, however imperfectly, since the early medieval period was gone, and it would not return. Luther's Bible translation didn't just give Germans scripture in their own language. It created a prestige literary standard that shaped German prose and poetry for generations, eventually feeding into the musical genius of Heinrich Schütz and, above all, Johann Sebastian Bach, whose cantatas, passions, and organ works are so thoroughly rooted in the Lutheran tradition that they are unthinkable without it. Melanchthon's educational reforms created the gymnasium tradition, the expectation that even ordinary citizens should engage seriously with ideas that left a permanent mark on German intellectual culture and contributed in ways impossible to trace precisely, but impossible to ignore, to Germany's extraordinary production in philosophy, science, and music over the following centuries. The fracturing of religious authorities planted, slowly and entirely unintentionally, something the reformers would have found horrifying. The seed of the idea that individuals might decide religious questions for themselves. The idea took 2 more centuries to fully develop. It required the Enlightenment to articulate it and the revolutions of the 18th century to institutionalize it. But it began here, in the moment when Luther stood before the emperor and said in essence that his conscience answered to God and not to Rome. The logic of that position, pursued to its conclusion, eventually produced not Lutheranism, but religious pluralism, toleration, and eventually the secular state. Luther would have been appalled. History rarely consults its instigators about where it's going. I said instigators instead of instigators, didn't I?
No, you said instigators. I'm pretty sure.
I'm going to
reread it.
History rarely consults its instigators about where it's going. The Counter-Reformation, meanwhile, produced a Catholicism more disciplined, doctrinally rigorous, and globally ambitious than the medieval church had ever imagined. The Jesuit missions to Asia and the Americas remain among the most remarkable cultural encounters in human history. But the siege mentality those decades forged, the Index, the Inquisition, the reflexive institutional suspicion of new ideas, contributed directly to the Church's agonizing confrontations with Galileo, Copernicus, and the broader scientific revolution. The Church that emerged from Trent was formidable, but it had also built walls that would prove painful to eventually dismantle. The fault between Catholic South and Lutheran North remained a living division in Germany well into modernity, shaping the politics of 19th century unification, feeding cultural stereotypes and religious and regional identities, leaving traces detectable even today in voting patterns and cultural attitudes that Germans themselves still recognize and argue about.
And let's not forget, Luther inspired the Mustache Man.
Yes, he did.
So, the German Reformation was, in the end, a revolution that succeeded, partly failed, and unleashed violence far beyond anything its instigators intended or wanted. And I would argue Luther maybe wanted, and transformed everything, including itself. It began as one of man's anguished search for a gracious God, triggered by a thunderstorm in Thuringia, and became, within a generation, the justification for war, the engine of political realignment, the mother of European mass literacy, and the crack in the edifice of medieval Christendom through which modernity slowly, violently, and irreversibly entered. Oh, that's a metaphor, ain't it?
Mhm.
Just slowly forcing its way in. Oh,
Oh, I dislike that intensely.
penetrated.
Oh, why did you have to say the word?
The tragedy is not that it happened, I would argue. I would beg to differ.
Mhm.
The medieval church genuinely needed reforming, and the hunger it answered was real and deep. The tragedy, one could argue, is the price paid for it in blood, in burned cities, in generations of poisoned communal life between neighbors who happen to disagree about whether the bread on the altar was the literal body of Christ. That question is, by any rational accounting, not worth a single human life. Europe spent the better part of a century discovering this, at the cost of millions.
The same forces that drove the Reformation and its violent aftermath, the fracturing of authority, the competing claims of princes, the desperate search for enemies to blame in a world that felt cosmically out of order, also fueled one of the darkest chapters in German history, the witch hunts. Between roughly 1560 and 1650, the Holy Roman Empire became the epicenter of witch trial executions in all of Europe, accounting for the majority of the estimated 50,000 people, mostly women, killed across the continent. This was not coincidence of timing. The confessional wars had shattered communities, undermined trust in institutions, and left ordinary people living in a state of chronic fear and social fracture. When crops failed, when children died, when plague followed armies home, someone had to be responsible. The theology of both sides, Catholic and Protestant alike, agreed completely on one thing. The devil was real, active, and working through human agents. In a century that had just watched Christianity tear itself apart over the precise nature of bread and wine, the idea that Satan was busily recruiting village women in the Rhineland was apparently entirely plausible. What makes the witch hunts an almost perfect coda to the Reformation story is that they were, like the religious wars themselves, enthusiastically pursued by all sides. Lutherans burned witches. Catholics burned witches. Calvinist magistrates burned witches. The Reformation cracked open a world. What crawled through the crack before the light finally came was not only modernity. It was also the smoke of 1,000 pyres. And that is where we will leave you this week.
If you like what you heard today, please give us a positive review on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. It goes a long way for us to appease the algorithm gods and get this suggested to others just like you. The more we can connect to our fellow history nerds, the more we can build up a community and keep this show going.
Also, we have a Patreon where you can hang out with us and get exclusive content, like videos where we might try to make some ancient recipes, talk about topics that couldn't fit into the main arcs of the podcast, and just generally being batshit and dumpster fires, all for the price of a latte per month. Research materials and books cost a lot of money, and it takes a lot of time to create this show, so anything that you can provide would be a huge help.
We can't wait to see you again next week, and as always, thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.